we catch all the witches gathered in one room. They're grilling Nightingale, asking if they can dodge the agony of maturity by using their magic powers every single day. Nightingale shoots back that Anna and Nana are living proof of this theory. She claims she's spotted changes in both girls' bodies using her fog. Their consistent magic use has beefed up their magic vitality, and at the same time, softened the pain of anti-phase. Or you can call it maturity as well. She doubles down, saying if they burn through all their magic right before their awakening, they'll breeze through the anti-phase with almost no pain at all. Wendy chimes in too, confirming they never got to exhaust their powers in the past because they were always on the run from the church and never dared to unleash their full abilities. Lady Leaf finally understands why she felt no pain during her own antiphase. She suffered while making her way back to the association. It was probably because her magic was exhausted after battling those demons. Once Lady Leaf finally understands the cause of their suffering due to the antiphase, she is terrified to realize that there was no holy mountain they were chasing after. However, Wendy immediately reassures her that the holy mountain may not be a physical heaven-like place. Instead, this town is more than the holy mountain to every witch because there is no discrimination here. A witch then suggests that if all this turns out to be true, then perhaps other witches might have also found their way around antiphase. However, she reveals that she had sent letters to the other witch associations in the kingdoms of Wolfheart and Daw, but received no replies. Nightingale reveals that Roland is trying to gather all the other witches by spreading rumors in the cities about this town being the Holy Mountain, hoping they'll gain confidence and come to this place too. Another witch admits she still doesn't understand Prince Roland's motives, questioning why he's taking an interest in them. One lady speculates he might want them as dancers like other nobles. Nightingale gets mad at this portrayal of our heroic prince and tells everyone they'll understand him better once they've lived here longer. Wendy agrees, speaking from her experience living there, vouching for Prince Roland. She advises them to be prepared to sign a working contract with the prince tomorrow. So, the next day rolls around, and everyone gathers in the dining room. Prince Roland lays down the law, telling everyone to carefully read through the contract details before scribbling their names. He urges them to start practicing their abilities according to the plans in the contract. Lady Moon pipes up nervously, worried she'll mess things up during her practice once again, like that time she almost bonked Lady Lily with an iron pan. Roland quickly reassures her, saying he will assist her in her training. He then tells Lady Scroll, Leaf, and Lady Soraya they are going to meet him privately. Later on, we find ourselves in our hero's office, where he starts his questioning. He kicks things off asking about the incident where they encountered creepy creatures, and only 7 witches made it out alive, including the teacher from the association who bit the dust in the Badlands. He wants to know if those things they saw were hybrids. Everyone clams up, especially Lady Leaf, who faced those beasts alone. She trembles a bit and finally speaks up, and states that they weren't demons but more like devils from the underworld. She mentions that they had tall frames and they could control demons, and they had magic as well, just like witches. The boy turns to Lady Soraya, asking if she was there when those monsters showed up. Anxiously, she confirms, and our hero slides a paper towards her, urging her to sketch out what the monster looked like. If you're confused about if Sister Leaf was the only survivor, then how did Soraya see those monsters? To clarify, Lady Leaf allowed some of the witches to retreat while she fought the monsters. Anyway, Lady Soraya conjures her special pen, leaving Roland in awe of her skill. She starts sketching, and with some deft strokes, what appears on the paper terrifies both our hero and Nightingale. Soraya feels drained after completing the drawing, and Lady Leaf wastes no time pointing out that the monsters in the picture are exactly the devils they encountered. She explains how one devil could throw javelins at lightning speed, while another could summon lightning itself, all alongside their immense physical strength. Lady Leaf also notes their weakness. They couldn't sustain their special attacks continuously, which she exploited to defeat them solo. Roland is shocked to hear that Lady Leaf took on those monsters alone. She then clarifies that she discovered a weakness under the devil's masks, a tube that was vulnerable. Kara's snakes bit the tube, severing it and causing the monster to perish, though it also cost Kara her life. So, the Lady Leaf used the same strategy to defeat another monster, discovering that there was red gas inside the tubes, which dissipated and caused their deaths. Prince Roland quickly realizes this sounds exactly like a respiratory system. But looking at the pictures, he's unsure if these creatures are aliens. Their skills and weapons don't seem to match up with typical alien descriptions. She then reveals they also encountered a floating city in the sky. No matter how much they tried to approach it, it always remained distant. Lady Leaf points out that the floating city might be a mirage. Our hero asks if they can draw it, because if it's actually a mirage, then the real devils could be somewhere in the Badlands, and the red blood mist above the city is what the devils breathe. Soraya starts drawing again, while Prince Roland considers that the flatlands to the west of the mountain range are unknown territories, so it's not surprising that other beings might live there. He then turns to Lady Scroll, asking about the ancient text Kara read about searching for the Holy Mountain. The girl explains that Kara never let anyone read it, but she once peeked at it. However, the text is scrambled and sloppy, and its contents are unimaginable. Prince Roland instructs Sister Scroll to recreate the ancient script for him, but she insists it's misleading nonsense and shouldn't be delved into. Despite her reservations, she conjures up a book as commanded, quickly closing it and explaining it's meant for his eyes only, fearing others might end up crazy like Kara. The prince nods, and later we find Nightingale snacking while Roland immerses himself in the book created by Sister Scroll. He asks Nightingale if she's not curious to see it, to which she simply walks away, uninterested in anything that might mess with someone's head. Roland argues that reading text won't drive anyone insane, and besides, he can't fully understand most of it because its language and grammar are archaic. He points out there's no mention of a holy mountain so far, only references to a bloody crimson moon and a massive stone door. He can decipher each word individually, but piecing them together is proving challenging. Suddenly, his eyes go wide as he gets something crucial from the text. The line he reads states that, "We regular humans don't stand a chance against these devils." Roland keeps reading from the book, telling how the divine stone of judgment couldn't hold up against the devil's relentless attacks. These monstrous enemies, scary as heck just with their brute strength, brought down the holy city of Tequila. They scattered all over, climbing mountains and crossing rivers to escape the underworld's door. The writer then spills that she's on her deathbed, being eaten alive by the devil's power. No medicine can help, so she's writing to her buddy Nataya for a favor. She explains how Alice's Judgment Army experiment is wrapping up, successful in making warriors who can stand toe-to-toe with the devils. But she's afraid even if they beat the devils, it won't be a real win. It'll just spell disaster. She begs Nataya to shut down Alice's Judgment Army, believing only Nataya can make that call. Once he reads all of this, Roland grabs his head in utter confusion. He speculates that Kara might have mistaken devils for witches, believing witches would reign supreme and prompting her to bring down the church's army. But he's still confused by how Kara had planned to overcome the Divine Stone's power, which is effective against witches, but useless against devils. With that knowledge in mind, at least he now knows the devils mentioned are a separate species, not witches. Still puzzled, Roland wonders when the church fought these devils and what kind of place Tequila is. He's frustrated with the original Roland for not taking studies seriously, leaving him with a disappointingly empty brain focused only on pleasures. He turns to Nightingale, asking if she knows where Kara found the book that drove her mad. Nightingale explains Kara already had the book when she joined the association, but she points out that, according to Wendy, the association was started by some witches who happened to meet in a sea breeze town. Nightingale explains that Kara, Wendy, and Scroll are the original members of their group. They discovered ancient underground ruins in the eastern forest near a town, but only Kara investigated further and claimed to have found the book there. After this discovery, the association expanded, and the church caught wind of their association and began a manhunt. Kara fled to the mountain range in search of the Holy Mountain, and that's the extent of their association's history. She then asks Roland if he's up for checking out the ruins. Roland shakes his head, saying the eastern forest is too far, and he'd rather focus on developing his territory than wandering off. Roland has another idea brewing, setting up a proper organization. He assures them it won't be like before, obsessing over holy mountains. Instead, it'll be a witch union, all about managing witches responsibly, no crimes or dodging the law with the use of power. Just freedom and happiness for all. The next scene takes us to the Longsong Fortress, where a grand noble gathering is in full swing. Among the attendees is Perov, the ambassador, who marvels at how this celebration mirrors the lavish banquets of the capital. He's certain that it took considerable effort from the Elk family to gather guests from such prestigious backgrounds at Longsong Fortress. In the background, we see a blonde guy telling her sister to approach the ambassador, but she is too embarrassed to do such a thing. So, the blonde then unexpectedly addresses the ambassador as Buddy. The ambassador bristles at the informal greeting, while this newcomer insists they're old friends and tells him not to be so uptight. He teasingly asks Parov ambassador if he wasn't appointed by the leader of Longsong Fortress, then jokes about the profitability of the mines at the border town, implying they must be raking in money from the locals. Parov quickly dodges the question, but the loudmouth keeps blabbing, sharing how he was headed to the Holy City but got stuck in a blizzard, which probably saved his life. Curious, the redhead asks for clarification. The blonde reveals that the new Holy City nearly fell, with demons breaching the inner city. If the church hadn't sent their strongest warriors, the Holy City's church would have been in big trouble. He adds that all the armies in the 4 great kingdoms suffered heavy losses, with few returning from Frost Valley. In just a month, many women were left widowed, and now those widows are easy prey, with anyone able to take advantage of them for just 2 silver coins. If you can't recall, we've seen these tough church soldiers clash before in previous chapters. I hope that rings a bell. The blonde guy is pretty convinced this is all part of the church's plan, where the 4 biggest kingdoms lost their generals and warriors in this war with demons and Hermes. Suddenly, newcomer asks the ambassador if he noticed a handkerchief in his invitation. The ambassador gets a bit peeved and asks if there's some mischief going on. The blonde guy reassures him, joking that if he wanted to tease him, he'd have included socks instead. He then mentions the handkerchiefs were sewn by his sister, who turned 16 right after today's shindig. Seems like the brother's eager to pair his sister up with this redhead, despite their big age gap. Suddenly, someone starts shouting, and all eyes turn to see a noble throwing insults and curses at our hero with every name in the book. Parov steps forward and inquires about the commotion. A man explains they are discussing the owner of the border town who has seized properties from the aristocrats. A curly-haired noble then steps forward to clarify directly to the ambassador. He reveals he resides in the border town but seeks refuge at Longsong Fortress each winter during the demon months. This year, however, every noble from the border town has been informed that Prince Roland has demolished their homes to build a wall and isn't providing any compensation. What's more troubling, Prince Roland has branded those who fled to Longsong Fortress as traitors for abandoning their prince and territory. Returning to Longsong Fortress now means facing the death penalty for treason. The ambassador quickly catches on that Prince Roland is probably aiming to cut his ties from Longsong Fortress completely to make his territory self-sustaining. Meanwhile, the noble keeps on bashing Prince Roland's moves, hoping Mr. Medi can help them get a message to the Longsong Fortress Duke to help them. Medi steps in coolly, telling everyone to chill because Duke Ryan is already on it. He boasts how the Duke's been building up an army and the Elk family is also ready to help in this cause. The border town's nobles are relieved, stating that if Duke Ryan is handling this directly, they have nothing to worry about. But the ambassador isn't thrilled about attacking Prince Roland. He pulls Medi aside, reminding him they're talking about a prince here. The blondie shrugs it off, calling Roland a prince who owns a patch of dirt and assures the ambassador that Roland will surrender once they face him. Despite all the reassurances, Parov isn't exactly thrilled about the situation. His friend keeps hammering home that if they march into the border town with a huge army, all those farmers and miners will scatter like ants, so the battle will be over before it could begin. But Parov's main worry is that Longsong Fortress will be the one to take the brunt of this conflict, not Prince Roland. He can't quite wrap his head around how Prince Roland will use regular folks to take on the Duke's army, but he has this uneasy feeling that Roland will come out on top somehow. Later on, Parov swings back to the Honeysuckle family in the Longsong Fortress. He greets his father, who tells him to grab a rundown on their imports, exports, and available labor. It seems they need to prepare for the Duke's army in the spring. The ambassador is shaken to realize they're dead serious about taking on the border town. His old man tells him Duke Ryan's already called for recruits once the snow melts, and all 5 major families got to pitch in knights and soldiers to back him up there. Parov asks his father how many soldiers they're sending. The old man, kinda surprised Parov's suddenly interested, lays out the knights and common workers they're sending, which are over 100 men in total. Parov gets really worked up hearing this, and begs his father not to hit the battlefield. The Baldy asks why, and Parov just says straight up he's worried sick about his old man's safety. Hearing that, the Baldy starts laughing his ass off at Parov's concern. He considers Longsong Fortress to be an elephant ready to squash the border town like a measly ant, so he ain't sweating it. He reminds Parov that Prince Roland only got a handful of knights and maybe 50 guards, but the redhead ambassador keeps his protest. He points out how everyone underestimated Roland's mud wall, thinking it would crumble after a night's rain. But surprisingly, it held strong. People also doubted the border town would not survive the winter, but Roland stood his ground till the end of the months of demons, earning everyone's respect. The Baldy gets more riled up hearing this and tells his son to shut it. He points angrily at the portraits on the wall, his tough-as-nails ancestors who stood firm in the battlefield. And as their descendant, he's not backing down from any battlefield either. The poor son couldn't help but take his father's insults, who just doesn't seem to get how unpredictable Prince Roland can be. He's pretty convinced it won't be long before Honeysuckle gets tangled up in this fancy politics and gets devoured by our prince. Back at the border town's castle, our hero reveals to us that he's kept his promise and granted some land to Nana's father, Tiggy Pine, making him a viscount. The land, south of the river across from town, is still dense forest for now, but Roland promised it would be the first to develop once the border town expands. Every business share on this land will belong to the Pine family, and surprisingly, the big man agreed wholeheartedly, opting to enjoy his undeveloped forest for hunting until then. On the other hand, Roland also officially bestowed knighthood upon Brian, and he will win land every time he racks up military achievements. Our prince has finally figured out an effective way to utilize his desolate land. With the river as a boundary, the area between it and the mountain range will serve as a military training ground. On the other side of the river, he plans to establish future factories and agriculture. He also intends to utilize the forest to the west of the border town, rich in lumber, edible fungi, wild animals, and medicinal herbs. Just then, someone enters. Well, it seems Sister Soraya has been summoned by our hero. The prince greets her warmly, motioning for her to come closer and sit down. He asks her about the progress on her work at the city hall. It turns out our hero tasked her to draw passport-sized images of everyone in the border town to compile a comprehensive report. Each person received 10 bronze coins just for sitting in front of her and posing for these sketches, and Soraya, still puzzled by the whole affair, diligently drew every visitor. But right now, our hero has called her in today for a different task. When Sister Soraya asks what he has in mind, the prince eagerly slams his hands on the table and tells her happily to draw a few trinkets just for fun. Soraya is a bit confused by this unusual request, but she agrees nonetheless. She asks if she should draw them from her imagination. Roland instructs her to draw a soldier holding a heavy crossbow on the paper. Soraya picks up her magical pen, and Roland specifies to draw the soldier in armor, detailing his environment. Looks like my guy has found the perfect way to use a ChatGPT-like bot to generate images for him. Anyway, the lady starts drawing anxiously while the prince watches closely. Once she finishes, he takes a look and remarks that it's surprisingly realistic. He then instructs her to draw a small circle at the top and middle of the card. Soraya follows his instructions as he continues to give commands on what she should draw. Eventually, after making one card, he tells her to create an entire deck and promises to teach her how to play with the cards. After creating those cards, he decides to play the first round with her, and they end up spending the entire day immersed in the game. The prince clinches the final round by slamming down his most powerful ace up his sleeve, leaving Soraya taken aback by its sheer power. She challenges him to another round, but he decides to postpone it for another day as it's already getting late. Soraya feels a bit disappointed, but agrees nonetheless. As the yellow hue of dawn settles in, a sweet melody fills the air, and Sister Soraya quickly recognizes it as Lady Echo's singing. She explains that it seems Lady Echo has learned the poem Soraya had taught her,